It didn't have the same ending that it had in 2022. With it being tied up, the field goal when the clock hit zero or whatever. But that still doesn't change the fact that I didn't take a good solid breath the entire second half of this game. This game got off to pretty much the same start we saw in the Florida and the Arkansas game, where at halftime we trailed 3-0, except for tonight we trailed 7-0. Dylan Sampson, and just the way he's played all year, playing lights out or everything, what was not a very good sign to everybody when he had that first quarter fumble. And, we're all sitting back thinking this is going to be a long afternoon. And the first half was really kind of starting to shape up like that. Just couldn't really get anything going offensively, but, thank God our defense kept us in the game the whole time. But yeah, we trail 7-0 at halftime. But then, as if on cue, like we've done in pretty much the last two, or at least the last 2 or 3 games, halfway through the third quarter, we come alive. It's like it's a completely different offense out there. And it all started with that Dante Thornton reception deep down the field, down the sidelines, that he actually is able to catch for a huge gain. And then we just kind of get rolling after that. Dylan Sampson ends up having 2 touchdowns. No more fumbles, no more mishandling or anything like that. Uh, you know, a lot of people, obviously in the Tennessee fan base, predicted Tennessee to win this game. Alabama was only favored by a few points, but Tennessee ranked 11, Alabama ranked number 7. We knew that even without the ranking part of it, just in the SEC, that this was going to be a pivotal game for for either team, for both teams, because now if you're Tennessee, you are 6-1 heading into the rest of the season, and pretty much the only real legitimate threat is Georgia. Now, Vanderbilt isn't a team to be ignored, obviously, but several weeks to go before we get to that. We're off next week for our second bye week, and then I believe we get Kentucky and Mississippi State, and then a non-conference game, all three of which will be at home. So it really kind of sets us up really good with really good momentum going forward. Where Alabama, now Alabama's sitting there with 2 losses against us and Vanderbilt. Now Alabama doesn't have, the kind of the harder caliber games coming up on their schedule for the rest of the season. The Tennessee game was pretty much it. So, it just kind of remains to be seen how they manage the rest of their schedule with 2 losses now going forward. But a little bit of stats or whatever for just for the game. Uh, Tennessee was 6 of 14 on third down, with 408 total yards, 194 yards passing, 240 yards rushing. That is very. I liked seeing that the 194 yards passing to 214 yards rushing. Very balanced, very balanced. A lot of people will say, "Oh, Tennessee's a passing team." Well, you got just as many people that will say, "No, they're a running team that opens up their passing game with a run," which I kind of fall into that group. I think that's really more the angle we come from, is that we're a run first team, that when our run game is successful, it opens up our pass game very well. If we and it also turns into a deal where, like, if we can't get our run game going, then we're almost forced to be one dimensional trying to pass it. But if they know, a lot of defensives, if they know what you're fixing to do, plus side to them, because they can, obviously defend against it, right out of the gate. But Dylan Sampson had 26 carries for 139 yards, most of which were in the second half. I know at one point in the second half, like in the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, once everything really kind of got turned on, he had 100 yards at least just in the second half alone, and both of his touchdowns were in the second half, obviously, and of course with the one fumble at the beginning of the game. And they took him out and um, put his backup. My mind just went blank, but yeah, they put the backup in for a little bit, but then put him back in and let him come back around and play some more. So second half he did fine. Alabama was 3 of 14 on third down, 239 yards passing, 75 yards rushing for 314 total yards. Alabama, they started off obviously well enough. They had a 7-0 lead at halftime. Could have been 14-0, possibly even 21, early in the game before they did score their first touchdown. Milrow throws the interception in the end zone, and it gets run out for a good gain on a turnover. So they kind of had a rocky go of it too, and the crowd did not disappoint. Everybody, myself and everybody, talked all week about how involved the crowd needed to be and how loud Neyland needed to be, just for the atmosphere and everything, and they came through. I believe it was because Alabama got the ball to start the game. I believe it was on their second play of their first drive, false start penalty. And penalties, I didn't write down really any notes for this or whatever, but I think by the time the game was over, both teams combined, there was like 23 or 24 penalties. Now I think Alabama had a few more penalties than Tennessee did. I believe Tennessee was penalized uh, 10 or 11 times for about 90 yards or so. I think I'm pretty close on that, which means, Alabama was probably penalized 12 or 13 times. They had a few more, but 23, 24 total penalties. It was like every time you turned around, a flag was coming out for something. But I will give props as much as I can to our offensive line on cleaning up some of the false start penalties. Now, I'm sure there were a couple of few with all the ones that, like I said, I didn't really make any notes, but nothing that really kind of stuck out as something that was just a repeated thing. It was pass interference stuff and just different things like that. But a great game. When I did my little prediction video, I predicted Tennessee to win, and I probably would have anyway, being a fan. But they really came through on this one, and it really sets us up very well moving forward. Um, this whole thing with Nico, um, he, I've been slightly critical of him. He's made some freshman mistakes. I think the kind of the thing with Nico is that he got off to such a good start against lesser opponents, whether it be the bowl game last year or the first three games of the season, you know, and all of a sudden, all the hype that got talked up about him in the off season, you know, in the first three games, it came true. It came to fruition. And so then when we kind of had the drop off with against Oklahoma, the loss to Arkansas, and then struggling against Florida the way we did, a lot of the criticism that he's been catching, to some degree hasn't really been fair. A comment that was made by me and a lot of other people, going all the way back to the Oklahoma game, was, well, we finally saw a freshman quarterback play like a freshman, because of some of the mistakes he made, some of the bad decisions he made, and just kind of the way he handled himself in the game. Now, he never just broke down and kind of self-destructed or anything like that, but I do believe he has caught a good deal amount of unfair criticism because his passing, it seems like more and more I'm seeing him being compared to Joe Milton. As most people know, Milton had the nickname Overthrow Joe. It seems like if Milton was going to throw a pass farther than 20 or 30 yards, he was going to overthrow his receiver. And yes, we have seen Nico do that plenty of times, and it was an overthrown pass. But at the same time, I haven't seen very much criticism towards our wide receivers, because how many of Nico's passes are literally going right through their hands? It seems like every game, well, I say every game, but it seems like tonight, I know it was mentioned, and I know it was mentioned against Florida. I'm pretty sure it was mentioned a couple times in the loss against Arkansas. Your receivers have to come through. These are veteran receivers that have been there for a while, and when they've got passes hitting them in the hand, hitting them in their hands, and then being dropped, that just chips away and slowly destroys Nico's confidence. These wide receivers, they've got experience. They've been this way before with Joe Milton and, you know, just other quarterbacks we've had. But, Nico's a freshman, and this is his first time in any of these environments, not in Neyland Stadium, but, against, these opponents. So I believe that that was a direct contributor to them kind of offensively turning things around in the third quarter, was when Thornton caught that pass, because all of a sudden now Nico has kind of a renewed confidence to be like, hey, I can do this. They are gonna be there to catch these passes, and it's gonna be me and them, and I'm not having to force this thing by myself. He only had the one um, interception where he kind of panicked. They flushed him out of the pocket, and off to the side he went, and he's just trying to make a play, and he just kind of threw it up, and the Alabama receiver kind of just ran up under it. Saw him coming, and just happened to be the first one there. So another freshman mistake. It won't be the last one, I'm sure, but our wide receivers need to continue to be there and catch these passes that are hitting them in the hands. Like I said, yes, there are some that are uncatchable, overthrowing them, that kind of thing. But just as many as are being overthrown and throws like that are the ones that are hitting them in the hands and then being dropped. So, but all in all, a really good, exciting win. Definitely momentum we need going forward. Tennessee is a momentum driven team. Now, you can say that's a good thing or a bad thing, or it doesn't matter one way or another. But just like tonight, the game didn't start off very well, but they get to the third quarter, good things start happening, momentum snowballs. Our defense, for one, stayed in there anyway, but because the offense started playing such good complementary football, it's almost like the defense even got better and had some amazing stops in the fourth quarter, especially to put this thing away. And then, how about that guy that caught the interception at the very end of the game? Put that guy on scholarship already. I mean, from what I understand, he was a walk on. But put that guy on scholarship as soon as you can. Reward that kind of performance. But that's what I'm talking about. The kind of the momentum shift in the offense, and now all of a sudden you're playing offensive and defensive complementary football. One helps the other directly, and it got us through to the end of the game. And like I said, they were able to have some great stops, against Alabama, and completely shut them down. I expected, Alabama, with what little bit of time they did have, you know at least get close enough to attempt a field goal or whatever. Now that wouldn't have done it for them. They would have needed a touchdown to regain the lead, but they didn't even cross the 50. And in the last two, and correct me if I'm wrong, and please do, but in the last two offensive drives that Alabama had were in their own territory. They didn't even cross the 50. So yeah, just having a really good momentum swing. But looking at it big picture, it does the same thing for the season too. Like I said, a really good spot next weekend for a bye week to kind of get over. Hopefully, Squirrel White gets a little more rehab and healing on that shoulder that he kind of bummed up a little bit. From what I understand, he was already having problems with it, and when he landed on it, going after that pass, I don't know if it was like just a re-injury or just kind of made it worse. But we didn't really see him any after that. So hopefully, he'll be okay going forward. They'll be able to, kind of put him through a little bit of therapy or whatever they need to do to kind of get him going. So he'll be somewhat available in the next games coming up. But it also helps again. Like I said, the next game that we'll have the week after that, I believe, is against Kentucky, and then Mississippi State, and I believe Mississippi State is homecoming, and then another non-conference game against UTEP. So before we have to go to Athens in November to play Georgia, and then of course Vanderbilt Thanksgiving weekend. So a great game with some really good momentum building for us going forward in the season. Um, we'll probably get on here again. Georgia is handling Texas. I'm making this film Saturday night. You're seeing it on Sunday. Georgia is handling Texas. Um, kind of surprised, not really. I don't want to go as far as to say that, Texas is just looking past Georgia, not really thinking anything about them. But Texas's defense has pretty much had their way. Georgia's defense, rather, has pretty much had their way with Texas's offense. I know right before I came out here to do this video, they pulled Quinn Ewers and put Arch Manning in because Ewers just wasn't getting it done. But we'll take a look at that game too, maybe on another video. But thanks for checking this one out. Hit the like button if you will. That really helps the channel out. Share these videos to anyone else you think might find them entertaining, and subscribe. I pretty much every day have something come out, whether it's a video like this or a longer version video or just little shorts, that I do kind of during the day. I'm having a great time doing these videos and putting them out there for you guys. So I appreciate y'all checking out the videos, and we'll see you next time.